Hello, everybody. It is Thursday night, October 24th. Scott Fishman is here. We're back for a live What's Up Wrestling episode. How are you, Scott?
I'm good. Is it really Thursday? I'm trying to decide what day it is myself. So.
It's Thursday, and there's so much that's happened. I'm kind of like,
I can't believe Halloween is next Thursday. Crazy.
Are you, by the way, I think you are. Are you a big Halloween person?
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay. I'm all about Halloween Horror Nights. I'm going to watch, I want to go see Terrifier 3. Haven't gotten a chance to see it yet. So, yeah, all about that.
Have you gone as a wrestler ever?
Have I gone as a wrestler for Halloween? Well, There was one Halloween that Monday Night Raw actually fell on a Monday. And I had some friends over, and I was in my Zack Ryder phase. So I have to find this photo, but I was at the part where Zack was offering, like if you wore his t-shirt and you took a photo of it, he'd send you like an autographed card or something like that. And he really did. But I had my Zack Ryder shades. I had my Zack Ryder shirt. And then my wife, she was actually Vicky Guerrero. She had like the little cougar necklace thing.
Oh my God.
Now that we talk about it, I gotta go back and
look at our Halloween episode. Well, wait, I got one. So my best friend and I went to a Halloween. He was Sting with the completely painted in the face, and I was NWO Hulk Hogan. And we and we were we had the belts, and he was ending up dripping in makeup, like it just sweat the makeup
off. 90s.
I'm like, it was so 90s. I think that was the last time I dressed.
You have a photo of that? I want to see that.
I do. I need to find that. I think. All right. So everybody, Halloween episode, we'll do that. So this week has been a week of controversies and so much stuff in the news. And like 1 minute, I'm like, are these people getting canceled? Like what's happening here? But I want to get your thoughts on a lot of this. The first thing is this whole Carlito, Io Sky, Kairi Sane moment. So basically, so he says he sees Io and Kairi, and isn't he with Adam Pearce? And he goes, I got to learn Chinese because he thinks they're apparently sexy, and then that is then people get on that. And then I heard that Io and Kairi were okay with it. They said something about it didn't bother them. But what did you think of that? Because that kind of became a viral thing this week, and it apparently he ad-libbed it.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of like went over my head for the most part, because I mean I understand it now when I hear it, but it was one of those things where I was like half listening, was like half because I was working on something else, so it didn't really appear to me when I was listening to it. But it's just crazy that if these things happened back years ago, like decades ago, I mean, this would just be like a normal. It would be tame considering everything. So it's interesting that the time frame and things like that. And I read also that Carlito, that wasn't a planned scripted moment either. Correct. So it's something that he was kind of ad-libbing. And when you look at the character that he's been playing of Carlito, it's kind of like kind of this playing like not smart, or he's playing dumb, kind of basically a lot of I don't know if it's like a character where he's going to come back and like when they're going to break up in the Judgment Day and he's going to be like that. But I'm not saying it wasn't offensive, but also a lot of things can be a lot worse too. So I get what they're saying too. I get the backlash.
Well, I do get the backlash because I think he went off script, said it, thinking it was like an aside moment, probably. Oh, I'm funny. And they kind of took it. I just thought it was interesting that the girls were okay about it. They said, from what I understand.
I mean, I'm sure they have a friendship with the people in the back, and they know it wasn't a malicious thing and how they feel. And if they're not bothered by it, then my question to you is, should we be as irate as we have been online with it? Like,
that's what I'm saying. There's this culture now that we're in, and I see that, a minute we put up the red flag, the minute anything, we're on everything. I mean, that's the way social media is, especially on X and on, you see it just right there. I had investigated a little bit because I did not see it happen live. And I was like, wait, what happened? I think it is, you can say it's kind of like, it's not a great thing to say, I don't think. But
It definitely wasn't needed. I don't think he needed to add to that segment like that. But
and you make a really great point, and this is the best point you made, really great point. If this was in 2000 and they said this, it'd be, oh, they're just so nasty over that. Like, oh, whatever. That's typical of them.
yeah, it's a line because you want to represent, like, pro wrestling over the years has represented like what's going on. It's historically been when you're showing what's going on in the world, whether it's like Sergeant Slaughter and the Iraqi War, or even, what we saw with the Nation of Domination and things like that. So do you want to see these characters reflecting on what's going on outside of pro wrestling, or do you want it to be in a bubble and kind of see like that? So I could see a double-edged sword here. I mean, I don't think it's like crossed the line as far as like it was so vulgar and so offensive, because there's so many other things he could have said when it comes to that sort of thing. But it definitely wasn't, the best, put him in the best light. But at the same time, it's kind of like, it's interesting because what every little thing is gonna be turned into a thing, and it's like exhausting sort of thing. Like, you're trying to.
Yeah, and on that note, we as journalists, some days there's no news. Like, I know there's no news, and then everybody's jumping on it, and then it's news, and then they're extrapolating as many stories as they can out of it too. So,
like, I'm seeing things like, oh, Carlito should be fired, or I can't believe they're not doing anything about it, and like, we don't know what kind of conversations they've had. We've all said things out in public that we may have regretted and things like that. So I get if he's doing this all the time, but should we be going after him like for this one isolated incident that we haven't seen him kind of in another scenario where it's been like that? Like, if it's become a growing pattern, maybe. But and then the other question is, has Carlito said anything about what happened? I don't know if he's actually.
I have not seen anything that I know from him
saying like an apology. You don't see WWE putting out a comment where we're so sorry about this or that. I don't know if it's coming or what kind of, maybe they just want to just move on, because if they say they address it, it's going to become an even bigger thing. They probably realize it is a big thing. I mean, I read that they are definitely not happy with it, of course, because they have sponsors, business partners, everybody that they
And what about the amount of Asian performers? There are so many in pro wrestling. This is such a major part of the sport. About all the Asian wrestlers and what they brought to the sport, like some of the greatest ever. It's kind of like, it wasn't great.
It wasn't great, and it's also the time frame of it. I mean, we're 2 weeks out from the election, and people are hypersensitive about everything. So it's just the timing of everything. I mean, we're going to go into another controversy that happened as well.
I want to talk about that,
which I think, so we'll get into that. But it's just crazy time we live in. It's like you got to be very, very careful, but with programming. But it then does it lose sight of what kind of programming you want out of your professional wrestling when it comes to characters and things said and things like that. But it was also live TV, and you never know what's going to happen. Sort of.
I mean, I know as a TV producer, it's icky if you know what the script is or what's supposed to happen, and someone decides, I'm going to throw this in, and you're hoping it's okay, and it worked.
I mean, he comes from a different time too. You got to think of that. So maybe that was a wake up call for him, and like, hey, listen, this is different times here, so you got to be careful what you're saying.
Unless it launches a new storyline between those guys. I mean, I've seen it. Like, now it's like, oh, he's got a boyfriend. It's him. Like, I mean,
oh my gosh,
go the other way with it. I mean, it's you never know what comes out of these things. But I do want to talk to you about the Drew Gulak, Masha Slamovich incident, and even leading into that. Now, this is a guy that we know that Ronda Rousey alleged sexual misconduct. There's been a lot of problems with him that have been mentioned. And then we have this segment between the two of them. And in the segment, and here's an example of the segment, he is asking her, if you feel uncomfortable around me and unsafe or uncomfortable in the locker room. Do you feel uncomfortable? And or have you seen anything that makes you? And she goes, I hadn't. And he says, well, you should have. And then he attacks her. He literally attacks her. So now he's beating up on her. And it's like people were, it was like the merging of a real life of accusations and a storyline. And it got a lot of pushback. And then Max Caster gets involved in this and tweets, love this. And then after that happens, Tony Khan comes out with a statement saying, I'm deeply disturbed by Max Caster's recent comments, praising and perpetuating harmful and unacceptable behavior. Sexual assault and violence against anyone are reprehensible and have no place in our society. Max Caster's opinion and our own do not reflect the values of all elite wrestling. We take these matters extremely seriously and are committed to fostering a safe, respectful, and inclusive environment for our talent, staff, and fans. AEW has zero tolerance policy for any form of harassment, abuse, or discrimination. We will address the situation internally, ensuring that our workplace remains a safe place for everyone. And then it goes into how they stand with victims of assault and violence, and such as organizations like RAIN if you're in trouble. What do you think of this? First of all, I watched the moment with Drew and Masha. I did not like that he kicked her, and I thought that was really bad.
I mean, it comes a fact for him to dude, you need to read the room, not only because of what happened to you. I mean, I don't know why you even would want to make light or draw attention to the reason why you got exiled. Yeah, why? Take some responsibility. If you're denying these claims about what happened with Ronda Rousey, then why are you turning it into a storyline? And if the people for this promotion knew that this was going to happen, shame on them as well too. Why would you agree to allow that on your show? Because if something like that, you really don't that's going to affect everything. If you're an independent promotion, you want good feedback. And if it's a family show, or even if it's not a family show, it's this is one of the cases where, hey, yeah, you do not want to get involved in this sort of thing. I mean, you don't want to make light of something so serious. And even if, what happened with Ronda, I mean, there's just so many other things. It could be triggering for people too. Watching this happen with Masha, and I know Masha's a badass and she can hold her own, and she's, certainly, doesn't need to play be a victim in this scenario, but the way they're playing it out is really uneasy and disturbing, and something that should not have happened.
And then I want to ask you about Max. So he goes, love this. Did he just not think? Or is this playing into the fact that they're playing the fact that he's going to have a heel turn, and he's going to end up with MVP and company because they're bringing all that up. So is this, I mean, it's kind of and then Tony Khan, unlike WWE, he did say something. He did put out a statement where you did not see WWE do something. What do you think of Tony's statement? Do you think he should have done that, or was it?
I mean, it was fine to do, but if you're gonna do that, I mean, what are the repercussions in that case when it comes? What kind of accountability are you having when your talent's going to be doing this? There's been constant issues, in my opinion, what I've seen on social media with AEW performers. You obviously want them to be who they are and individuals and things like that, but it seems like there's been a number of cases where they've gotten themselves in hot water because of things that they're posting on social media. And I don't know if maybe they need to step in and have some sort of meeting. I don't know about training, but some sort of forum, open forum, or just talk about what you do with your accounts, and kind of thinking about it that you're not, you're independent contractor, I guess so, but you're contracted to a certain company, meaning why you're representing the company. Even when you're not in front of the camera, you need to consider these things. And, Max is no stranger to controversies. He's gone in the hot water before of things he said by himself on television. So, now we're at a place where he's not only did he say these things, but and he deleted it, but somebody was responding to him, and then he took it a step further. I think he responded to someone rather than say something else, like taking accountability of what he saw or something like that. He doubled. I don't know if he doubled down, but he definitely did not seem any remorse.
Well, it came off like he was seemingly supporting the exploitation of really life, like a real life harassment allegations in the wrestling storyline. Like that's what people were saying. And I'm just trying to understand. It was very disappointing. I really did not like that segment with him and Masha. I thought that was really poor. Like that the company, like that even went on. He's gotten in so much hot water leading into this, Drew, that why would you think like that's a story we're going to tell?
Yeah. And then he's, and then, this comes after what was in March where he said his account was hacked for some things that were said online. That's kind of a, probably a different scenario, but just seems like controversy keeps following him. And then, it's always said controversy creates cash, but in this case, he was suspended before for things. So I'm curious to see, how this plays out, because at some point someone needs to be, set as an example. And so I don't know if that's going to be in this case, but that you can't have everyone, running free and doing, and there has to be something, like there has to be a line, basically when it comes to certain things.
Yeah,
I was sad because he's a talented guy, and
very talented guy, and I really liked him.
You don't want to have this ruin your career, so
yeah, and I definitely see them breaking the Acclaimed up here. It's got to happen. If he's staying with the company, they're breaking them up. You don't think so? They are?
I mean, I didn't see that happening, but it's sad because it's such a hot act and people love them, and they've done all these great things. But after everything that's happened, if I were Anthony Bowens, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I kind of want to be on my own at this point. Yeah. I want to be controlling my own destiny, sort of thing. So,
imagine.
Like I said, it'll be interesting to see what kind of happens after this, if anything. But I feel bad for Masha too. I don't know if like being put in that kind of situation. We haven't heard from Impact, or have we, when it comes to, or TNA, I should say, for being a part of that angle. But
I was very uncomfortable watching that. I just thought this guy, it just was creepy and icky, and I didn't think they had to do it. And I'm
interested, when Lyric comes on, from a female perspective, what she thinks of that, because I know she has a lot of strong opinions when it comes to certain things. So I'm curious to see how she feels in this kind of way of what we saw, and not only that, but the reaction that Max did.
Right. Well, we're going to bring Lyric on with us. We're so excited to have her with us. She's with PWI, and what's even amazing is we're going to be talking the PWI 250 top women rankings, which is always the thing that we all wait for every year, the men and the women. Scott and I had Candace Cordelia on when we talked about the men, and now we're going to have Lyric on with us. So let's bring her on, and we're going to get into this. I'm really excited. Hi, Lyric.
Hi. So happy to be here. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. We needed an expert who's really like in the room. And Scott, like Lyrics, I'm gonna bring her on. How long have you been like deep diving into wrestling in your life?
18 years.
Okay, you say you're like a lifer, kind
of. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Was it I was gonna say, was it the women's wrestling that drew you, or?
No, it was. I don't know. I think like just. I remember like the first time I ever watched wrestling, it was Raw, and I felt like the larger than life aspect was something that I really enjoyed. And like one of my hometown guys, Shelton Benjamin, was always somebody that I looked up to. I was a big Edge fan. He was my favorite wrestler growing up. I didn't really get super into I had some women's favorites, but I wasn't really keen on WWE women's wrestling for the longest. I liked then I started watching TNA and I really loved the knockouts there. Awesome Kong, Gail Kim, ODB, that era. And I really I think became a bigger women's wrestling fan during NXT. So Four Horsewomen era. And then ever since that really caused me to deep dive into, wrestling all over the world. So yeah, that was really kind of like my journey with women's wrestling specifically.
So tell me, give us a little behind the scenes when you guys put together these rankings, because you're on the committee. Mm-hmm. You're on the committee for this. So what goes on in the committee? Like, I hear it's quite the process. Is that
true? It was my first year ever doing it. Honestly, it was such an honor, I think, just to be selected. I haven't been doing wrestling content for as long as some folks, even though I've been a fan for essentially almost my entire life. So just to be selected to be in the room, I think was just such an honor. And it's kind of basically what happens is we'll start with a list of just women all over the world, just writing their names down. So we know like who's out there. And that still doesn't even touch everybody all over the world. There's just so many incredible women's wrestlers all over the world, but just trying to analyze it first by market. Okay, so who are the women's wrestlers in Australia, in Japan, in Mexico, and UK, and North America, really trying, even breaking down North America more into, the United States and Canada, really trying to get it more into like those aspects. And then you start with the top 10 and then basically just keep going down of just, okay, everybody just share their picks of, and then it's like a lot of, debates, and you take it all with the criteria because the criteria.
I've got the criteria here.
Yes. So the criteria isn't just about, who's the best in-ring wrestler in the world, but it's also not about who's the most popular. It's a mix of a lot of different things: in-ring achievement, influence, technical ability, competition, and activity. You had to have at least 10 singles matches for the entire year or 6 matches in separate months. So we just really kind of do that. And those calls take a long time. But after we have figured out the list, we split up, making sure that there's descriptors and, in the magazine for people to learn more about these women who are featured in the list. So it's an extensive process, but I think that, that's what's well-deserved when you see how much women's wrestling has grown over the last year.
I was going to say that, now we're at the 250. There's going to be a time where there's going to be a PWI 500 for the women, I think. But you talked, Lyric, about when you're growing up, it wasn't the women's wrestling that did it until later on. So it's exciting to see the evolution with yourself and so many other voices, women's voices that are now being, having a seat at the table and helping continue on and be that representation. Because there was a time when I would go to shows and all the girls and everyone wouldn't wear they would be wearing all the guys' shirts. But now I'm seeing, there was a switch over where I'm seeing guys wearing Alexa Bliss shirts and they're proudly wearing Bianca Belair shirts. And now the girls are also wearing the women's shirts. So it's all about representation. And now people are seeing this. And through the magazine, they're able to kind of learn so much that they didn't know before, which has been a great thing about this list of people, because I may have not heard of some of these people, but reading their biographies, I'm like, I need to go on YouTube or something and check it out. So
you guys know that when, because I'm older than all of you, but I was just going to say, back when I started, the women were just props. They weren't the wrestlers they are. They were like the TNA, they would come out, they were just there as fluff. It was very chauvinistic towards women a lot of the times.
Absolutely.
It was just icky. It never really showcased them as athletic wrestlers. They were just used as like objects. And there was a time that it was just, it was awful. It was like the 90s until it was early. It was like that. So I'm so thrilled to see the evolution now where these women are headlined WrestleMania or, their headline, their main event match.
And it's not a novelty anymore. It's not like, oh, look at this, Trish and Lita are headlining Raw. This is great. No, it's like, okay, this is just a random, Monday Night Raw, and we're seeing, the ladies' tag team titles on the line in the main event.
Okay.
So it's become that
Kristen
thing.
Ashley says, "Hi, y'all. Fought backstage so I can say hi to Lyric."
Hi, Kristen.
Have
Who was
one.
also amazing on our committee. Absolutely amazing.
Oh, she was on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I want to know, there were no knockdown drag-out fights in the committee. You're all just like,
no. Listen, those knockout drag-out fights, they only exist online. Of just when actual wrestling fans are talking to each other calmly and stating their points with the evidence to back it up. There is no knockout drag-out fights, and I think that Twitter often desensitizes us to that. But I was honestly, like I said, this is my first time, and so for all I would have known it could have been like that. But truly, it was such a professional process of people having respectful conversation, and I'm really delighted that I was able to be a part of it.
Well, we're gonna talk first the top 10 and work, and then we'll mention some honorable mentions. How about that? Are we good with that? All right. Okay. So we have Athena at number 10. So what do you guys think of Athena at number 10? Are you happy with the spot, or what's your theory? Too high, too low?
I can't say too much outside of the actual list, but what I will say is that a lot of things are taken into account over the how do I say it, the evaluation period.
Right.
And during that evaluation period, Athena did miss a significant amount of time in ring due to injury.
Right.
And so when we're thinking about injuries and things like that, and being away, especially on a platform that's already pretty underseen, those things can affect you as far as some of the things in the criteria. In my personal opinion, I think that Athena is one of the best, if not probably the best pound for pound women's wrestler in North America. And I want her to win everything and be everywhere. But I do think that it was a pretty good consensus that number 10 was a really good place for her this particular year. But we all know her talent, and it's a good chance, she could be on top of the whole thing next year.
Scott, are you good with Athena at 10?
I don't know. I feel like she could be a smidge higher, but like Lyric was saying, it's because, being on Ring of Honor, unfortunately, she's not getting that exposure, which is a real travesty because she's doing some of the best work of her career on this platform where she's having these incredible matches. She main evented a Ring of Honor pay-per-view. She's, it's just the whole thing with Ring of Honor is so tricky. And it's interesting because you're seeing talent from Ring of Honor, or you're calling them Ring of Honor talent. Maybe you're not, maybe you're not. You're seeing them on AEW as well. But she's kind of been one of the ones that have been just strictly on that show. And the Billy Starks, story was so amazing as well. She keeps crossing milestone after milestone. So it's a shame that she's not featured as much. I mean, she represents the title so well, and she's not getting, all the time getting the credit that she deserves, like she was saying. So I think, like you said, Lyric, I feel like continuing the moment as she's doing right now, I have no doubt she would be even higher.
Well, I just felt like AEW botched her. Like, I remember she was on, and then she didn't get the push, and then she's in Ring of Honor. I just felt like, what happened there? Because she was on there, right? She
kind of fell into that kind of category, as we've seen a lot of the talent that's come from other places.
It kind of fell out of it and was, all in on this Ring of Honor, stuff. But I kept thinking, did they not do her solid at AEW?
I think that AEW saw Athena as a big star, and I think that they do. But I think that at the time when she came in, protecting Jade was the priority. Keeping Jade protected was the priority.
Timing.
And so just the timing of it all, at the end of the day, while Jade was holding that belt, she wasn't dropping it. So, and Athena isn't the only person in the division who ended up running into that. We saw plenty of people. Willow Nightingale challenged for the title, 4 times? So I think it was just more so of a timing thing. And so Ring of Honor gave her time and space to really grow into who we all knew who she could be, and to that big, just to be able to carry a brand. But I do have confidence that she'll be back in AEW after Final Battle.
Okay, my girl.
That's the photo you choose, the drama.
The glamour, Mariah May, who I love. And I bet she's going to be higher next year. But This was so great. Just the heel turn, the whole thing. But what do you guys think of the glamour, Mariah May, at 9?
I think it was a really great place for her. Obviously, she's still a work in progress in a lot of ways. But also, she is also miles ahead of a lot of people in a lot of ways as well. I've been a big Mariah fan since her first day in Stardom. I watched her entire Stardom run. She was when I got started as a content creator, she was the first big interview I had while she was in Stardom.
What's she like? Was she nice to you?
She was awesome. And I think one thing that I've noticed about her immediately, she was so hungry, even then, of just like going to Stardom. She literally left everything to go live in Japan for 9 months. She had 99 matches in 9 months. That type of work ethic, doesn't come across every day. Like, she was so hungry, so eager to want, to get better, and watching her get better in Japan. She ended up winning the tag titles with Mina Shirakawa. So it was really, I think it's been really cool just to watch her grow. And then when she came to AEW, seeing her in this long-term story, she has star written all over her. And I think this year was a great breakout year for her, but she's only going to get better.
Scott, Mariah May, number 9.
Yeah, I think that definitely is a good spot. I mean, you could arguably say her and Toni Storm had the best built story of the year. And the payoff and everything, just from start to finish, was just such creativity. I mean, a lot of people give crap to AEW saying that they don't have stories, they don't have characters. Well, don't treat their women's wrestlers the right. I mean, they can argue just by talking about this rivalry, this feud, that it's not totally 100% true in that sense. And like you said, Mariah coming over, you were just waiting for that breakout. You knew it was coming. You saw little glimpses of it, but it was a slow burn, and then the payoff has been amazing because people got a chance to know her right at the beginning. They weren't sure, maybe they didn't watch Stardom, maybe they didn't watch Japanese wrestling, and then to see her with Toni Storm, they slowly got to know who she is. They got an idea of who she is, and then they waited for that right moment, and now she's on her own and carrying herself really well as the champion, the women's champion. And I think to make a transition from Japan so seamlessly, because she had the character development down, she had the persona, she has this confidence about her, this aura, the star aura about her. So, and it's awesome to think that we've only scratched the surface of, who she is, so.
I would just like to say that I saw Mariah May. This story was so great because you knew it was all about Eve. They were literally doing it. And they played it to the hilt. And I remember seeing Mariah wrestle before the heel turn, which you knew that was coming. I thought she can really wrestle. Like, I don't know what she's like lyric in Stardom, but I was very impressed. Like, she has everything, like the whole thing, the in-ring skill, the attitude, the wrestling skills, like it just all checked. And now she's going to be higher next year. You'll see, right?
Listen, you don't have to convince me. I believe it.
Okay, we come to Willow Nightingale at number 8. So, what is your thought on Willow? Like, I did not anticipate she would be I didn't originally think she would be as successful as she became. Did you believe that was now she's super popular? But I didn't know at first.
I knew I liked her. I knew I liked her from absolute day one, and I expected her to be a star, but I didn't think who she's become in such a short amount of time. I think it was on Twitter, 2 days ago. It's only been 2 years since she was actually signed. And when you think of all she's accomplished, she's in such a rare breed of women, not just right now, but of all time to have she's held titles in Mexico, in Japan, in the US. She's, you know, Owen Hart tournament winner. She's main evented pay-per-views for Ring of Honor and New Japan. She's a trailblazer. She's a history maker in such a short amount of time. And I think like she's one of the best baby faces, I think, of our generation, of just one of those people who makes you believe in her. She's one of my personal favorite wrestlers. Just
Are you all in her entrance? Are you like clapping with the
How can
entrance?
you not?
absolutely, no, 100%. Like absolutely.
I am. Yeah.
And I think like she's one of those people too, of just like, I go to shows sometimes for Willow. I wear Willow shirts. Like she's one of those people like and so many other women are personally, I think, invested in. And I think like she's a great baby face because she's not a doormat. Like she has the smile on her face, and then she'll go have these bloody hardcore matches that I think are awesome. Of just, she has so many layers to her, and I think like that just makes her.
Did you not love the Chris Statlander match though? It was fun. Scott and I talked about it. It was probably one of the best matches I've seen.
I had the pleasure of being in the room for that. So I was at All Out, and so I got to experience that in person. Just absolutely fantastic watching her grow. I think the only thing that I would say she's number 8 this year. She was on number 8 last year. Just obviously she hasn't had any particularly long reigns, you know, with the title. But this is a future number 1. One day she's going to be number 1 one day. I would willing to bet on that. Like she's absolutely incredible.
Mr. Fishman,
I think for her, I mean, she just exudes happiness and joy, and we definitely need a lot of that in this world. Like the way the world is right now, I think Willow's come at the right time. And you talk about timing and right place, right time. I think Willow hit that because, you know, when women are out, they need someone to rely on, that they depend upon, and they found it in Willow. And I think it's awesome to see someone get rewarded because it doesn't always happen, but it's awesome when it does happen that someone gets rewarded for being a hard worker, taking the ball and running with it and making the most of everything that you're given. And she does all of that. So I think she checks all the boxes when it comes to that sort of thing. And it's been fun to see her evolve and from her character. It reminds me a lot of Bayley in a lot of ways. She just gives that
absolutely
vibe.
I feel like it's an evolved version of NXT Bayley, like a very all grown up, evolved version of that character, who I also loved at the time. So,
but there also has to be something to your point, both of your points. If she's got all these titles and all these different promotions, right? They must feel really comfortable with her.
100%.
Like, think about someone only a couple years in getting all these titles at this promotion. They must feel like whatever she's doing behind the scenes too, they must feel comfortable with her, that it's not like, we can't give this to her right now. You know,
she's a real student of the game. I think, especially like following her trips to Japan, of, you know, one of her idols is Akira Hokuto, who I like. When I interviewed her, Willow, she flat out said, like, so many people think that my Dr. Bomb is like, it's a tribute to Dr. Death Steve Williams, but it's actually a tribute to, you know, Akira Hokuto's Dangerous Queen Bomb. She's really a student of the game, so this means a lot. You can tell she genuinely wants to be there, you know, like she's not going to Japan and Mexico just like pad her resume. This is clearly like, you know, something that's important to her, and it's a goal for her. And I think also too of while this women's division has really been getting off the ground in AEW, Willow has been the international ace. Like she was the person that AEW sent in that New Japan Strong Women's Tournament that changed the course of women's wrestling history, you know, with Stephanie and Mercedes and Willow. She's the person who was sent, you know, to the CMLL world title match, to the women's world title match after, you know, Stephanie, you know, had to pull out, you know, to go to WWE. Like she's been that. I mean, she went to Stardom during her TBS run to face, you know, Tam Nakano for the TBS championship in Stardom. So she's been dependable for not just AEW, for all their partners in a way that I don't think that we've really seen before, of women being those international world beaters, you know, like, you know, people like Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega talk about. Like we're finally seeing women get into that conversation, at least on this type of scale.
Number 7 is Bayley. And I think Bayley had wait, is this the eligibility year when she wins everything, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Bailey gets another run. Yeah.
literally at WrestleMania in the press, were you guys there in the press box? I just remember all of the press going crazy for Bailey to when she won. Like that was a big moment because we all were loving this new version of Bailey. She was like now the baby face again after she was so cruddy as part of the No, but like I really, what do you think of 7? Should she have been higher?
I will be honest.
I think she should
I
have been.
don't.
No?
I don't watch a lot of WWE at all. So I've leaned on my colleagues heavily for this one. But I will say because I grew up with like, such a big fan of Four Horsewomen, like, as a teenager, I've kept up with what Bailey's been doing. I do think she had a good year. Winning the Rumble. I think the match that she had with EO at WrestleMania, which I did watch, was really good. I do think that, how do I say this, of this era of at least WWE from a women's wrestling standpoint, it doesn't seem like what Bailey has to offer is what people are particularly looking for out of their women's wrestling anymore. Like, I think that the focuses are different. I think that what's important as far as storylines is different now in a lot of ways, at least as it relates to top titles. And you'll see it in like maybe the Liv and Rhea story. I think that Bailey is representative of kind of like a different time, if that makes sense, of the women's division. And I think like that kind of hurt in her perception. Like, for example, like, and even as somebody who doesn't watch WWE, I keep up through like peers. You would all probably wouldn't have known that Bailey was champion, because everybody's talking about what's happening elsewhere. Everybody's talking about this person, but Bailey's holding the belt and nobody's talking about her. And, like even the company's leaving her off of posters. So I think like from an accolade perspective, yes, 100%. Like, but I don't think that on that influence part, she's not as high as she has been in the past, in my opinion. But like I said, I don't watch regularly enough to have like a
disclaimer.
Yes.
Before you send your hate tweets,
Bailey.
So I mean, her influence is still there, but I get what she's saying as far as that is concerned. Like when I talk to a lot of the current women's wrestlers today, a lot of them go back to NXT Brooklyn, Sasha Banks and Bailey. That's like the go-to match. And that was at the time when she was in NXT. So it's interesting at that time, that's where she was considered, okay, this is Bailey. And then she had that big character change. And, Damage Control, I mean, was hit or miss a lot of the time. And it was a great idea and concept, but it really never clicked as it standed, with her at the forefront.
Yeah, I agree.
So that was interesting because you really wanted it to be, and you love Bailey and you really wanted her to do well. And it's just, and you love everybody else involved too. So you just want it to work, and it just wasn't working. And they were forcing it down people's throats a lot of times. It was great to see the women on TV, but it became a point of they were just on TV for the sake of them being on TV rather than
they were losing.
And they were losing like every week too. So
every week.
Yeah, and I don't care what anybody says. Wins and losses can matter in a storyline. Like
definitely can.
It is a device and a storytelling device, but
even in Bailey and Bianca's feud, like Bailey lost like every match. Bailey lost like every match, and I say this as like a Bianca super fan. But it's just also too. It's just
wait, I'm a Bianca super fan.
Yeah, I'm a bigger Bianca super fan.
Okay, we need to talk about this.
No, we can settle this.
Bianca off. Okay, here we go.
Other people are like, my other wrestlers are like, Bianca. I'm like, Bianca's the best.
No, I literally know. I'm kind of obsessed with her. I think she's amazing.
But one thing I'll say about Bailey real quick is talk about someone who's just a locker room leader, though. When it comes to in front of the camera, like I just talked to a lot of the women wrestlers today, whoever it is, and she's always a supportive with them. You always see supportive tweets, when she's supporting their matches. She's watching the shows. She's backstage. She's helping out. There's someone is a lifer for WWE or a lifer in professional wrestling behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera. So in that sense too.
I agree with everything that you're saying, but I think that is something for people who have been watching Bayley since the beginning. Like, you know, I think me and you agree on that. But let's just be honest. The current fan landscape is not made of just NXT Black and Gold fans. And for people who just started watching WWE in the last 3 to 5 years, no, they don't know that. And they don't care that she's a locker room leader. You know, like from a purely kayfabe perspective, Bayley, even if she's held a belt, has she been made to feel like a top girl? No. Since probably that, you know, that pandemic era when she was, I would say, you know, what her and Sasha were doing, you know, a cut above. But since then, has she really felt like the top girl? No. And you know, like it's one of those things too of just, you know, that's one of the things. If you, the longer you're a wrestling fan, I think you have a softer heart towards a lot of people. But you have to remind yourself, for people who are just getting into this.
So basically, we're saying she has to go to the behind the scenes.
I mean, also too.
No, I mean we can't fault just her. It's also the storylines that are being. Things go in cycles. They're not to say that Bayley won't get back to her.
Yeah, I'm faulting more so the booking than anything else. I think Bayley is amazing. I think she's a trailblazer. Like she's a legend. Like if she does nothing else for her career, she's a hot.
Like right now, you're right. She's like a device for what's going on with Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax. So
yeah, and I was
talking about Bayley in a lot of ways.
Thing. See, I know people like Nia Jax. I'm like, I don't love the story.
I like the story between her and Tiffany. Actually, I'm waiting for the
Bayley part of it.
But with the Bayley part, yeah, it's kind of a means to an end. Like Lyric was saying, it's almost like she's kind of the background player right now.
So number 6,
being champion.
Number 6 was Siri, and then Stephanie Vicor, and then Micah, right?
Micah, yeah.
Right. Her.
Yes, so Micah. And I did want to briefly say about like Suri and Stephanie back there. Yeah. Sorry, she's my pick for best of the year. Like she's my number one. She was my number one.
Why is she? Why?
She was my number one. She is my number one because she's my. I do think that she might not have been the right number one for this list. Particularly, she is the best in-ring wrestler in the world today. But sorry, right now, like you look at a Japanese scene that was really struggling after COVID, after restrictions. The last of their restrictions were peeled back at the beginning of 2023. You know, their COVID restrictions really struggle with attendance. And she came back to the scene after, you know, like a stint in NXT that really didn't work out. And she's been one of the most consistent draws as a freelancer, carrying Marigold on her back, Seedling, Sendai Girls, Skabon here in the US. She's been doing so much, and also kind of like the Forbidden Door in Japan, of working, opposing promotions with, Stardom and Marigold, being able to do her own events and have talent from all these promotions come for her. She is a mogul, an influencer, and also I would say like a real force to be reckoned with in wrestling that is very rare already, but even rarer as a woman.
It's funny you say that because it's like with all that on her resume, her now coming to NXT would have been a completely different scenario how things played out. It's crazy.
Kind of, yeah, but honestly, the type of wrestler that Sari is, I don't think that she
would have translated.
NXT would have ever been the right fit for her long term for the type of wrestler that she is. She would have had to sacrifice certain parts of herself, I think, dramatically and in a way that I'm not sure would have been as, I would say, fruitful to the essence of who she actually is.
Good on her, though, to bet on herself, like know her worth and be like, 100%. It's not working here. So many people are like, oh my God, it's the United States. I'm coming from Japan. I'm the be all end all. Asuka's here. Kairi's here. Yeah. I'm going to do well. Like, no, like, oh, this isn't working out for me. I'm going to go home and look what I'm going to do. Like, that's kind of how I got. But, I was sort of like one of the few, I don't know. I kind of liked her little entrance at NXT where she would do the transformation thing and that.
it wasn't for me, but I also I like my women's wrestling hard as possible.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
What about Stephanie?
She wants to beat the living, you know what?
What about Stephanie at 5? Because everyone keeps talking about Stephanie. She's always
I think that this was 5 was a good place for her this year. I think that she was destined for the top 10, definitely top 5. I mean, one of the actual most influential women in wrestling this year, who gets to actually be able to say she was one of the most influential women in wrestling of, wrestling in CMLL, wrestling in Mexico, wrestling for Rev Pro in the UK, wrestling for New Japan, wrestling for Stardom, wrestling for AEW, and then now wrestling for WWE, doing all of that in 1 year. And to say, like, of the people that she wrestled, she wrestled Julia, she wrestled Mercedes. Like literally wrestled Willow when Willow first came to CMLL. She has wrestled the who's who of women's wrestling. She's been there. She's done the tour. I think she's undeniable. I think that, and honestly, if she didn't take such a long gap between when she left CMLL and when she first started in NXT, if she was wrestling, she could have been higher.
Because I always see stuff every time I'm on X or on social media. There's stuff on Stephanie, like she's all being talked about. Don't you see that all the time? There's
absolutely, yeah. She's actually. And she's one of those people, like, she has it all. She has a very marketable look, but also too, she genuinely is one of the best wrestlers in the world. And that's just the truth.
What do you think? I'm curious, what are your thoughts on, Mercedes almost taking credit in a way for, getting her signed? I think that's kind of a little bit insulting to her and her abilities.
No, I think Mercedes is right. She's 100%.
She did put her on the map. She did bring exposure to her, but do you think if that match didn't happen, she wouldn't have gotten to WWE?
No, because Stephanie has tried out for WWE before and they rejected her. And also, too, Mercedes wrestled Stephanie again. She wrestled her the first time last year in New Japan Resurgence, and they had an excellent match during that show. But that didn't get WWE to want to sign Stephanie. It was only after they realized that Mercedes wasn't coming back. Because I think still during that New Japan run, a lot of people were just like, she's just going to get this out of her system and she's going to go back to WWE. Mercedes has said herself that was originally the plan. I think that things changed. But I do think that Stephanie Vacker was always going to have a fantastic match at Forbidden Door, whether she was facing Mercedes, Willow, or whoever it was going to be, just because Stephanie Vacker is one of the best women's wrestlers in the world. But she doesn't get signed to WWE 2 weeks later without that match. And that's just the truth. And it's because Mercedes was in it.
Number 3, Rhea Ripley, who was number 1 last year, and she's fallen to 3. What's the skinny on Rhea at 3?
She's the most popular woman in wrestling.
So we put her at 3.
Like I said, I don't watch WWE often enough to really have too much of an opinion. I do think that, like I said, the criteria encompasses a lot of different things, not just
right.
Me personally, I haven't seen a great Rhea match since last year's WrestleMania, in my opinion. But like I said, I don't. Maybe there are more. Maybe I'm missing stuff. I don't.
It's been more of for her. It's more the storyline that's driven everything.
Right. But and Scott's point.
People have been so dang captivated with everything with Dirty Dom and Liv and everything that I'm sure that kind of played a role in
absolutely. And so I realized at the end of the day, she is the most popular woman at the most popular company in the world. So from a influence perspective, she's going to blow everybody else out of the water for the most part. And so
think about what happened in Australia too. A stadium show and everyone's coming to see Rhea Ripley. The whole show was built
and that's big.
Remember also she's now the baby face. She was the villain. She was the heel in this story. She's now the baby face. They were like, oh, this girl's gold. Everybody's rooting for her.
The reaction she gets is very much Becky Lynch-esque.
I think that Rhea's really talented. I would like to see more of it, the in-ring stuff. I remember watching that Charlotte match, and I said, this is one of the best matches in WWE history. Like, I think this is one of the best women's matches WWE has ever done. And they had some good ones. And I've seen like just about every big match that they've had since the Four Horsewomen era.
It's interesting because a lot of the women she's working with are a lot smaller than she is right now, like Liv Morgan and Zelina Vega, and it's just like the opportunities hasn't like been there. Like, Raquel and her have had some good chemistry too, so I'm interested to see, if we get to that one-on-one again.
It probably will. The thing, and I think it's a really good point, Lyric, you make. Match per match, it hasn't been about that. It's been more about this, the breaking up at Judgment Day and the thing with Liv and the thing with Dawn. We haven't seen her be given a quality match because she's in this storyline feud, right? Yeah. So number 2, Jordan.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't speak about Micah. I didn't say.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got to go back.
But Micah's had kind of a Bailey year, in my opinion. She has the accolades, and I say this, I'm a big Micah fan. I had the pleasure of being in Japan the night she won the world title and being at that show. Wow. And so that was really cool. On paper, I think that Micah was thrust into a really wild position in the sense of last year at All-Star Grand Queendom, she was a member of a tag team with her tag team partner, Himika, who decided to retire. And so she was Himika's retirement match. And so coming out of that show last year, that was the same match that Mercedes Moné lost the IWGP Women's Championship to Mayu Iwatani. Coming out of that match, Micah was coming out of a tag team, and nobody really knew if she would swim as a singles competitor. But she continued. She started to absolutely dominate. She ends up making it to the finals of the 5-Star Grand Prix, which is the round robin tournament for Stardom. She ends up losing, but then the then world champion at the time, World of Stardom red belt champion Tam Nakano, she gets injured. So suddenly the big match at Dream Kingdom on December 29th becomes for a vacant title. So it's a rematch of that final, Micah versus Yuzu Suzuki. Micah wins the World of Stardom Championship. And right after that, mere days after that, on January 4th, I only know this because I was there. You have Donna Del Mondo disband, which was Micah's faction, who she was in with Julia. We found out soon. By then, everybody knew that it was something that was about to happen. But then the announcement becomes official that several Stardom members are leaving. Julia, Utami Hayashishita, Mirai, Mai Sakurai, and Yuzuki. And then it turns out they're starting another promotion. So Micah was thrust into a position to where this promotion has had a world champion get injured, lost a lot of their stars overnight. They've started a rival. You now have a rival promotion, and you have to be world champion. And I think that she was put into a new faction with Mina Shirakawa. Mina is now doing U.S. dates, and so she's there. So I do think that Micah was put into a position where she had to be everything. And I think some of her reign hit, some of it didn't. Some matches were better than others, but she had some actual great matches during this run. She ended up winning the 5-Star Grand Prix this year. Even after she dropped the World Stardom Championship, she also held the Trios title during this time. Obviously there are some, stars who are more popular, I would say, than her, but considering the year that she had on paper, she was undeniable for number. She was what, number?
She was number 4.
Number 4, yeah. On paper, that's a pretty golden list of accomplishments there. I mean, even when Stardom came back to the U.S., she was here. She got to wrestle, for Ring of Honor at Supercard of Honor. So she's been a little bit everywhere. Been doing some external dates in Japan.
She's good.
Lyric thinks she's pretty good. I think.
Okay. It's pretty good. I think she's had a hard time connecting. I think with the fans sometimes. Like I said, it's kind of like one of those Bailey things of she has the belt, but is she seen as the face of the division? Like, is she actually seen as the face? It's more one of those situations, but Micah is a personal favorite.
We have Mike at 4, Rhea at 3, Jordan Grace at 2. So what do we guys think of Jordan Grace at 2? Scott.
Definitely well deserved. I mean, it took somewhat, if how successful she was in the Royal Rumble, if how she carried herself from TNA into WWE, if she shit the bed, basically, they wouldn't keep going. But the fact that she did all these it was so important that TNA had some sort of representation that really turned heads, and Jordan Grace was that.
I remember
the reaction, how she handled it. She was a star. She was one of the show-stealing parts of that Royal Rumble match, and she made such a solid impression that it continued on and on. They're giving her more and more, and from there it was built into this relationship between TNA and WWE. So it can't be understated enough how important it was that Jordan Grace, did well with this, and she did, and she affected this whole relationship and affected TNA and WWE. And the fact that she's working with NXT wrestlers, the fact that she worked a WWE show challenging for the NXT Women's Championship, which would be unheard of even like a year or two ago. I thought that was a no-brainer, her at number 2. You couldn't even have argued number 1. Like, it could have been neck and neck for me.
I literally remember the pop at Royal Rumble, and people where I was seated, people were going crazy, like,
yeah, I remember. I was there. Yeah,
screaming in my ear, like, and I'm like, it was so great. To Scott's point, the TNA, WWE, we get to see this melding of organizations that we never used to see. When I grew up, we had AWA in the Midwest, was like the Vern Gagne thing. We had Vince in the East. We had NWA in the South. Like, it was so territorial. And I always thought, wouldn't it be great if they all like finally mixed it up? And that's how I felt about Jordan Grace getting to be in WWE and pop in. I just thought, how exciting. So what do you think, Lyric?
I think that Jordan Grace was everywhere this year. She I did watch the Rumble, and I think she did handle herself incredibly well. Even I think while Trinity was in TNA, being able to be that foil for her. I think a lot of times, they had some good matches in TNA. I even saw some of the matches that, Jordan Grace had in Sendai this year in Japan. So she's just been a little bit of everywhere. I can't claim to watch a lot of TNA or NXT, but I do think it was well deserved for, I think, her to be up there. She's been so visible, I would say, this year, and doing some things that we really haven't seen before.
Okay, come on now. Timeless Toni Storm at number 1 made me so happy, because I just thought this was the best overall. The characterization, the whole gimmick, all of it was just the best. I mean, it was so funny, and she's so good. Like this, I would have put her at number 1. That's what I think. I love her, what she did. And I always love how Tony Khan can't keep a straight face when they're doing the press and laugh. The Wendy Richter thing. Wendy Richter.
I'm still waiting for that match, by the way.
Wendy Richter. I know, I want the Wendy Richter. But tell me, you guys, did you not get the biggest kick out of just the whole change in the Timeless Toni Storm, how they did it and how they've executed this? Come on.
Oh, I've loved every second of it. Tony's a personal favorite of mine.
Me too.
My first ever AEW show was the night my first in person was the night she debuted in AEW. And so she was one of those people who I always thought so highly of, and I never really felt like she was used to her full potential in WWE. So finding out that she was going to AEW, I was already so pleased. And the thing is, Toni was never bad. I think that's the thing. Even when she first came in AEW at the time, even when the women's division wasn't what it is now, she was a breath of fresh air even back then. She really picked up the title after, Thunder Rosa got injured, and she was wrestling on Dynamite every week. And she was really really putting prestige back to the title after there had been so much like, you know, back and forth between injuries and things like that. She was been so instrumental. And even like during the Outcast stuff, she was always the standout for me. And so like seeing her really sink her teeth into this and go all the way, I think one thing that the only criticism that I had during the run is I think for a while, she had a hard time melding the wrestling with the character. I feel like it was a lot too much, but when Azumi came from Stardom and they had that match on Collision, ever since, like Toni was just back in full form. And I think like she's had some really, really good matches this year that, and it didn't fall in the evaluation period. I'm sad, but I wish that it did. But the match that she just recently had when she went back to Stardom versus Mayu Iwatani, absolutely amazing.
When you guys were in the room and deciding this, did you know, like, did you have it right away? Like, how quickly did this come to a conclusion that she was number one?
This was the first decision that was made, and it happened really quickly.
I see. I wrestled.
It was one of those things to where even if you aren't the biggest AEW fan, even if you were like it was a lot of people saying like that, then not like this is Toni, like this is Toni's time. Like it was
Toni time.
Undisputed, undisputed. Yeah.
I mean,
what do you think? It was the greatest. I loved it.
Going from seeing her in the Mae Young Classic, and you would get the feeling that when she won that, and there was a star on the rise, and they're straight to the top, and it didn't happen, and it was unfortunate. She was almost going to become one of those what if stories, and
I know.
She didn't let it, and it would have been really devastating. And that's one of the things when people are talking crap about AEW, and they're like, you need to go out of business. If you didn't have an AEW, we wouldn't have timeless Toni Storm, and that would have been a real tragedy. Because
I mean, if you look at this year's PWI, you have Tony's finishing at number 1, and you have Swerve finishing at number 2. That says everything. It says everything.
Yeah,
just like
the platform you're given and what you do with
100%.
it.
And in my opinion, Swerve would have been number 1, but
no,
you know,
but if someone goes
ask you that, that's somebody already. Okay, yes, I was going to ask you that.
What I was going to say is, it's so hard to pull off a character and not have it come off as too campy or people don't believe in it. But her commitment to it, the performance of it. I mean, if there was I always say like, wrestlers should get Emmy Awards or nominations, or it's so unfair that we don't see that, because here's a clear person who would get nominated for just the over-the-top performance.
Never breaks character.
And then, even beyond that too, I think it's more so of like influence and cultural relevance of. I mean, when history looks back on like this era of AEW, if you want to mark where the women's division shifted, it comes with this timeless Toni character. Everything else that comes after, you know, like with Mercedes, you know, Mariah, all those things, that comes afterwards. Timeless Toni finally cracking and doing this camera, this marks a shift that shifts AEW and women's wrestling as a whole. I think that what they did this year really changed the way that stories are told. Stories are told in the basis of what, like, and like not trying to like compare anything, but when you look at the meat and the root of the story that Toni and Mariah told, and you put it up against, you know, other women's feuds and stories, I mean, what touches that? The only thing that I can think of, but the only thing that hurts it is because it's on Ring of Honor, is probably the story of Athena and Billy Starks.
Yeah.
And honestly, if we really want to get there, that's the true catalyst for even the timeless Toni stuff of just that story's been running even longer. But these long-term women's title storylines, and if you look at how the company was affected this year, the stories that they told, you know, Mercedes and Willow versus Chris Statlander, you know, the stories that were told, even the side quest of Toni and Mina, and bringing this in and like using this feud. Toni, this opened the relationship between AEW and Stardom. That wasn't happening at the beginning of this year. It was when Stardom came to Philly for, you know, the American Dream show, you know, and Mariah is reuniting with Mina Shirakawa for Club Venus. Toni Storm makes her grand return to Stardom. Like that is what reopened that relationship. this had Forbidden Door implications. The influence and impact were only just at the tip of the iceberg here.
Well, that in the story, I was going to say one more thing real quick, is when you have a story, so often, like a good movie, it's like the payoff is never as good as the story build. In this case, it was not only that, but it probably was even better than the story. Like the story they told in the actual match leading up to it, like you didn't even think, okay, this is going to be good. But man, that was like next level storytelling and match.
It was the best.
Absolutely.
Now, did you guys, when you guys found out she was married to Juice Robinson, what was your
it makes so much sense.
I would love to see when it's time. Could we see those two in a story?
Oh Lord!
Well, the thing is, my first ever media scrum, I asked that question. I asked that question because at that time, this was Forbidden Door 2023 in Toronto. Because at that time, I think what was it? 3 weeks before that, Tony had come to Resurgence to help Juice and his New Japan Resurgence in California to help Juice defeat Fred Rosser. And so that was her making her grand debut in New Japan. And I remember she was still a part of the Outcast, so she gave like some nonchalant answer. But I don't think she basically was like, whenever he needs me, I'll be there. But I think it can't be off the table. Like those two.
Oh come on!
Absolutely
hilarious.
I want a reality show. I mean,
I'm serious.
I even asked her that. I don't know. I think before our character, I was talking about a reality show, like on the farm. Or
I would just like to see them interacting on the show somehow.
Absolutely,
because he's great too. Lyric, it's been so great. Before I let you go, is there of the 250? Is there one placement in there that you're like, is there somebody in that list somewhere? You're like, I wish they weren't at 70, but they are, or something. Anybody?
I would probably. I wish Chris Statlander was higher, but I know why she's not, because that match happened right at the end. The match with Willow happened right at the end of like the evaluation period, like right after we had like finished doing a lot of stuff. And honestly, I don't even know where I would put her, but the match itself was so good that I just like it was just so good. But yeah, I would say maybe that. I think more so. I think maybe just Chris. I mean, I would have loved for Bianca to be higher, but at the end of the day, the list does favor singles competition, and she has been in a tag team for, most of the year. So that's just one of those things.
Well, I'm confident that things are going to change for Bianca soon.
Oh, they better, or else, come on, man. They better.
Both of you, look out.
It's like
I love her too bad. Like, by WrestleMania,
we're gonna get Jade and Bianca one-on-one.
We are at WrestleMania.
Listen, I would much rather we get the Bianca Charlotte match that we were supposed to get last year before injury. It was very clear that they were building towards it. Bianca has beaten every horsewoman except for Charlotte.
Ooh, good point.
She's beaten Beck. She's put down Beck.
Was Bianca number one in PWI a couple years ago? Or never been?
I think the highest she's ever been is number 2. If I'm not
really? I don't know.
Maybe she did. Maybe she has. Like I said, this is my first year, so.
Well, Lyric, thank you so much for coming on. It was really
2021, by the way, I believe. Yeah, 2021.
She was number 1.
Then it was the 150. So look how far we've come.
So wait, it was Bianca, then who, and then Rhea, and then.
Well, now you're just asking for too much.
Let's see.
We had Bianca. Who was 2022?
I'm looking.
Rhea.
It was Suri from Stardom.
That's right.
Stardom was number 1. Yes.
Interesting. Well, I thank you so much for your time. This was so great to get
very informative too.
Very informative. I now have to go to Japan and
yes. I went one time last year. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's absolutely, I can't wait to go back.
All right. Thank you, Lyric, so much. And you're at Lyric Wrestling, right?
Yes. Yes.
Where else do we?
on X and Instagram, and my first and last name Weird Swinton on YouTube.
Swinton, right? All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, I feel I've learned a lot tonight, and I feel like we need to go. Fun. We need to go. We obviously need to go to Mexico and Japan, and like that's a lot.
Well, I went to Japan for the first time last year. It was amazing. I got to go to an independent show. A lot of people know journalist Fumi Saito. He actually took me over there. So got to see some random wrestling, like some old familiar faces like Masato Tanaka, Kaz Hayashi. Minoru Suzuki was in a random match too. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, but I didn't get to do a lot of wrestling things. Like I saw Coldplay in the Tokyo Dome, but one day one of the things I would love to do is go see, a wrestling show inside the Tokyo Dome. That's kind of a bucket list, as well as going to Arena Mexico and seeing a show there too. So
before I let you go, a couple things.
Why you got to remind us?
Bummer. Samantha Irvin has left WWE. One of my favorite people. I loved watch. I mean, what a great announcer. What a great. And remember the moment, was it at WrestleMania when she got teary-eyed over Cody actually winning? Like you can't.
She always gets the emotion out. It's always fun to see her reaction videos after the fact.
Do you see her going over to AEW with Renee Paquette? Like, what's going to happen with her?
I don't know. I've been watching some of her past performances on, America's Got Talent and, other shows, and just her performances are incredible. Insane vocals. Like, I think she's just got to a point where she's like, now is the time. I need to, like, it's now or never. If I want to make this music career happen, it's got to happen now. So, here's the thing. She's still fairly young. Look at Lillian Garcia coming back to WWE after all this time. It's not to say that Samantha's gone forever, and not gone. She'll have a job somewhere within wrestling if she wants it. She's that talented, but I think she's at a point where she's got to make the move when it comes to the music career and using that renewed visibility, and the demand of a WWE schedule, even though it's light compared to what it was, it's still demanding, and it takes a lot of time and effort to build this music career if she's all in with it. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of the main, the main motivation. But it's pretty surprising that, it happened so quickly for us. But apparently it was in the works for a little bit.
And you don't think it had anything to do with her ricochets at AEW?
I mean, in a sense that if their schedules are conflicting and you're not seeing your significant other, I think that played a role in that scenario. But I don't think she's going to go to WWE just to go to AEW. I think there's more that's going to happen. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, or, it's unheard of that's not going to happen, because it could. I mean, it's obvious, Ricochet's there, but I think music also is a motivator.
Okay. But this is horrible. Vince and Linda McMahon name a new ring boy sex abuse lawsuit against WWE. Does it ever end? Like, I just cannot. With this came out today, or was it yesterday? Yesterday. I mean, this was very upsetting. The Ring Boys are where their names are the group that is suing. And the story's terrible. And it just makes you think. Hold on, I'm just pulling this up.
Yeah.
It just makes you think, like, all the stuff that's gone on. They're saying 5 former Ring Boys alleged WWE co-founder Vince McMahon and wife Linda knowingly allowed a ringside announcer, crew chief, to sexually abuse the boys decades ago. And the ring crew chief, Melvin Phillips, would hire underage boys, and I heard that they were, not from the greatest backgrounds, and to help set up WWE events where they were groomed, exploited, and sexually abused. And they date back to the 80s, and Phillips died in 2020, and as such is not a defendant in the lawsuit. But it's just unfathomable to me, the things that seemingly have gone on. I mean, I don't think people just pulled this out of nowhere. Do you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it just seems. I mean, it's obviously a story that's been covered over the years, and sadly, it's more in this scenario where McMahon is kind of like it's under his watch, sort of thing, with Linda and management knowing about it, and then just continuing to allow it to happen by saying, well, allegedly continuing to allow it to happen by firing him, bringing him back, and then just saying, "Oh, stay away from them," sort of thing. Not like
It's almost like the coaches in like, the college or high school, that they always saw it going on and then turned a blind eye.
yeah. I mean, that's decades ago. Unfortunately, the mentality is a lot different than it is now. Thankfully, we've come a long way in that sort of situation. But it seems like with every different headline that comes out, you can see another chapter of that Mr. McMahon documentary. I know another story that came out as well with the hostile work environment of the writers.
That's where I'm coming right now.
It's just like one thing after another. Well, that we knew, that one we have heard stories about from writers over the years, and the sneezing and the pushing the chair into the table, and how uneasy.
Out for the yelling. I mean, there was how they were treated when Vince yelled.
Yeah.
Like you did something that you didn't think you were going to get yelled at, and the uncomfortableness. And then the other thing that was really interesting in that article was how the other writers would let, somebody take the fall and be the one, and they wouldn't stand up for them because everyone was just so afraid.
Scared. There was fear.
That is what it was. Yeah.
And that's it seems like the environment that was fostered during, for so long. And it was accepted. And then when you're getting out of it, you're looking back, and it seems like a lot of the talent and workers are like, oh my God, how did I survive that? I mean, it's just crazy. Like when you hear about all these stories, and it's crazy how long some of these people have lasted, like over a decade or more.
Just remember like being in a room and being like people are afraid to talk. And if you talked, you could get shot down.
Like, how do you be creative in that sort of environment?
That was the problem. How does anybody who's a creative mind be creative? And at the end of the day, when you read that article, it literally says you could do all the work, but Vince changed everything.
Pairs it up minutes before the show.
Vince changed everything. It was whatever. Yeah. So you could be working and spinning yourself into a, oh my God. And then you hear, here's the script. And then
I think someone, or I don't know if someone's done this already, but I'd love to get the writers to like, I guess it's like under wraps, I guess you're property of WWE when you're writing storylines or things like that. But I would love to know like the stuff they had in mind that got thrown away. Like I would love to show like this episode of Raw actually was meant to go this way before, things were tweaked. I'd love to kind of go that way.
I just remember there was a lot of changes last minute because Vince changed everything.
Yeah. We got to do that show, man.
Do that show. After I read this article, I'm like,
it brought back. Was it triggering for you?
Very.
Wow.
Very. It was triggering, and I find a lot of truth in it. And I wonder what the culture is like now. And didn't they there's been some people that are like under Triple H, it's great, and some people say it isn't, right? Some people were saying at that end of the article in Rolling Stone, they were saying Triple H is just an off branch of Vince. It's not that different.
Oh, wow.
I think they ended that article with the Triple H cliffhanger, like, is it really changed? But I don't know. I mean, you hope it is.
Yeah. Well, it becomes a thing where as the years go on, we're going to know one way or another. Because eventually people are going to leave, and eventually some of them are going to talk, and then that's how that's going to go.
But yes, we wrap. I mean, it was a week of just bombshells. Like this happened, and that happened, and this
whole year, every week, every day, it's just been like insane.
I don't remember it being like
never
being like that. Does it for you? What's it like? Is it interest you, or you just go, oh my God, no? Are you like,
It's sad because you're torn because you're a wrestling fan, but then you have all this stuff come out and you're like, other people are going to be looking at this that aren't wrestling fans, and that's what they're going to focus on. When you know there's so much good in wrestling, you know there's so many good people, there's so many people doing good things, like Adam Copeland with the Hurricane Helene, like what he's doing in Asheville is not getting enough attention, like just stuff like that. I love to get more of a focus on that because that should be a story that's right at the forefront, like things like hurricane relief, the fact that TNA Wrestling, they couldn't do shows in Spartanburg, and then they moved the shows to Nashville, and then they do they do it as a charity, TV tapings as a charity event. I mean, there's so many great positive stories that go on in professional wrestling, and then unfortunately when these come out, and it's necessary because you want people to be held accountable, but it's just sad that it has to be that way. And
yeah. Well, I will let you go. Thank you, everybody. This was a very informative night.
Yeah,
I feel we learned a lot. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back with another What's Up Wrestling soon. Oh, next Thursday is Halloween.
Yeah, we might have to talk scheduling. I don't know.
Wait, are we not coming on in our costumes?
I don't know. We'll see what happens. At some point, maybe one of the days. Pre-tape, maybe.
And costumes. You'll have to pick your wrestler. I'll come as Orange.
I have a lot of lucha masks. Maybe I'll just pick one of those.
Oh, lucha mask is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now
See what happens.
Okay, we'll see what happens. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Bye, Scott. We'll see you soon.
All right. See ya.